Pleading not guilty, former President Donald Trump going to be going to trial. When? We shall see. Let's break it all down for you here. Springfield's Morning News. I'm Greg Bishop on 92.7 WMAY. Springfield's News and Talk. You can always chime in anytime via Twitter or X. Also YouTube, Facebook, and if you're following along live on the stream, you can definitely comment there. But we've got United States of America v. Trump. This is obviously the case that Special Counsel Jack Smith brought forward and indicted the former president. And looking at the indictment, go over this for you. It's a good 45 pages long, and it really does kind of just spell out a process that some people are saying is protected political speech. Others are saying that it's criminal conduct. So you can see how the arguments are really going to matriculate as this process plays out. But what are the charges here? The charges are conspiracy to defraud the United States, tampering with witness, victim, or an informant, tampering with a witness, victim of or informant, again in a different charge, and then also conspiracy against rights of citizens. Note here, there's nothing in here about inciting a riot, even though it takes about 40 pages or so for January 6th, the actual events on that day, to be brought up. A lot of the indictment focuses on a term that's used quite a bit, and that is knowingly false information. And this is all throughout the indictment, especially when it comes to conversations the indictment alleges that Trump had with attorneys and officials from his cabinet, from across the country in various states. So it goes into detail about all of these different conversations and talks about how the president eventually spread knowingly false information. And that's a term that's used quite a bit all throughout the indictment. But you've got these charges now, and Trump is, of course, the leading Republican candidate. And he's out saying that he believes this is election interference. And we'll go ahead and hear what the president had to say yesterday on the tarmac after he arrived and showed up to court in Washington, D.C., and a statement he made, just real short. Here's the former president talking about the charges and his not guilty plea.
Thank you very much. This is a very sad day for America. And it was also very sad driving through Washington, D.C. and seeing the filth and the decay and all of the broken buildings and walls and the graffiti. This is not the place that I left. It's a very sad thing to see it. When you look at what's happening, this is a persecution of a political opponent. This was never supposed to happen in America. This is the persecution of the person that's leading by very, very substantial numbers in the Republican primary and leading Biden by a lot. So if you can't beat him, you persecute him or you prosecute him. We can't let this happen in America. Thank you very much.
So again, the president responding to the allegations with a not guilty plea, and the case is going to advance here moving forward. But really the indictment, it just spells out conversations Trump had with his team and some co-conspirators, including Rudy Giuliani and Sidney Powell and others. And it says that Trump was told time and again there was no fraud significant enough to change the outcome. The Trump had refused to believe that, and even to this day, I mean, you listen to his political speeches, and he regularly refuses to acknowledge that there was not fraud. Bottom line, though, is, I mean, the process played out on January 6th. The votes were certified. The Electoral College was certified, and Biden won. I mean, that's the bottom line here. Those are the facts. But leading up to that is where a lot of the political wrangling took place. That's the Department of Justice and the indictment alleges crossed the line into criminality and fraud. So this is all going to be litigated, but obviously there's going to be politics in all of this. We'll hear from Kevin McCarthy, the House Speaker. He held a news conference yesterday back in his district, and he responded directly to the indictments and also talked about what we could possibly expect with impeachment proceedings of the current president, Joe Biden, for something totally unrelated, but all tracking along the same lines as we head towards the November 2024 election. It is Springfield's Morning News. I'm Greg Bishop. Follow along anywhere. Just search Bishop on air, and we'll continue on and hear from Kevin McCarthy coming up next here on WM. Back at it, reviewing the indictment that was leveled against former President Donald Trump and his plea of not guilty. And what you have is obviously a pretty contentious issue that played out after the November 2020 election up to January 6th of 2021, where you had a riot ensue at the U.S. Capitol. So a lot of the indictment goes through, again, the conversations Trump had with his associates and even some of the co-conspirators. And the term knowingly false was brought up quite a bit. But really, when you get down to it, it seems and reads like a review of the legal strategy that Trump was trying to employ to essentially call into question officially the November 2020 election results by highlighting concerns from various states, even though the indictment says that those concerns were knowingly false, highlighting different ways to get electors to the official proceedings and have them somehow ultimately show that there's objection. And listen, objections happen all the time. I could play you 10 plus minutes of back-to-back video of all kinds of people objecting to the 2016 election and the 2000 election and so on. And you have this allegation in the indictment about the president spreading false information to gin up discontent and to have people be frustrated and distrustful of the process. But listen, the process is there. It's called the Electoral College. And even looking at archives.gov, you can see how they spell out how the Electoral College process plays out. And in particular, on January 6th, the votes are officially opened and counted in a joint session of Congress in the House of Representatives with Vice President presiding. A candidate must receive 270 of 530 electoral votes to become president or vice president. If a candidate for president fails to receive 270 votes, the House itself will choose the president from among the three individuals who receive the most electoral votes. In this process, each state receives one vote, and it's up to the House members from the states to decide how to cast it. The election has gone to the House twice, 1801 and 1825. So there's a legal process there. And it reads like Trump was trying to trigger that next process, not just have the votes in the Electoral College, but to trigger the next process, the next step in the process. And it also goes on to say if no one receives 270 votes for vice president, the Senate will choose from among the two vote getters for vice president. If presidential candidate didn't receive 270 votes, the person selected to be the Senate as vice president will serve as president until the House chooses a president. If no one receives 270 votes and neither the House nor the Senate elect the president and vice president, the Speaker of the House, who's the next in line for succession, becomes acting president January 20th. So obviously, you know, the founders, they did pretty incredible work having all these backstops in place. And Congress has come in and modified those provisions even after the 2020 election. But that's really kind of how I read the indictment. And I did go through it. It reads like a narrative from a prosecutor wanting to charge somebody for something that's really never been done before in this country. And that's going after a presidential candidate, a former president, and alleging that they were spreading knowingly false information to try to defraud the federal government But this process that plays out, it's a very political process. It's not a court process. It's a process filled with political actors in a political atmosphere. So, do you go after that process and charge people criminally for these types of acts? So fascinating to read that. House Speaker Kevin McCarthy, he was in his district in California talking about a variety of different things, but he was asked about the indictment against the former president. And here's some of what Kevin McCarthy had to say when asked about the president pleading not guilty to these charges.
Well, look, I didn't see what happened today. I've been in meetings all day, but the one thing I do know is it really begins to feel like it's a two-justice system. I mean, I've watched Hunter Biden and what the federal government tried to give him pretty much immunity till a judge said no. I've listened now where we just had Hunter Biden's business partner come in, where the president had told America that he's never talked to his son about the business dealings, that his family has never gotten $1 from China. We've now found that they created 20 shell companies when he was vice president. We've now found that the business partner says the vice president called in 20 times. We now found that the vice president went to dinner. A little pay to play. Hunter Biden got a brand new Porsche, $142,000 car. Hunter Biden got millions of dollars after the one dinner with the oligarch from Moscow. So it seems a little pay to play. And then when the IRS, which I've dealt with many cases with the IRS for our constituents, I've never known them to let the statute of limitations run out, especially when you're supposed to pay hundreds of thousands of dollars you did not disclose beforehand. But that's what they want to do to the Biden family. It just seems to me, if you're part of Biden Inc., you got to pay to play, and now you got a federal government that lets you off on it, and everybody else gets treated differently. I just think that's
McCarthy
wrong.
was asked about the Trump indictment. He says he didn't see yesterday's events, went on to talk about the Biden family, but then he was asked again about Trump continuing to deny the election outcome.
You know, Donald Trump still saying the election 2020 was fraud. There was fraudulent activity going on.
Yeah.
That Joe Biden didn't win.
Yeah. And I can say the same thing that Hillary Clinton says about her election that she lost. I can say the same thing about the DNC who said it about the 2016 race. I can say the same thing about those in the Democratic Party from the leadership on down about George Bush not winning, that Al Gore did. But were any of them prosecuted? Were any of them put in jail? Were any of them held with no response to be able to get out? The answer is no. So yeah, you can raise that someone raised a question. And you know, in America, you are entitled to raise a question. You're entitled to question whether it was honest or not. That's the uniqueness of the First Amendment. That's the uniqueness of America. But you know what? You shouldn't be prosecuted for your thoughts. And the difference here is when Hillary Clinton said it, nothing happened to her. When they said it in Georgia's election, nothing happened to them either. You know what? When the DNC said it, nothing happened to them either. So stop using government to go after people who politically disagree with you. That is wrong, and that should stop now.
So, again, he highlights, Hillary Clinton not believing the election outcome. And you had 3+ years of Russia-Trump collusion just all over the place and being spread by Adam Schiff, spreading knowingly false lies, and then a variety of other, actors in the corporate media spreading that as well. And listen, the, again, political process of the Electoral College. It is a political process. You had in 2016 Democrats, still high-ranking Democrats in office today, stand up and officially objecting to the outcome of the election. And you had the same thing happen in 2020 with Republicans standing up, officially objecting to the 2020 election. So I think what's going to be interesting is as this case against Trump continues to move forward, he's pleaded not guilty, and you've got a hearing coming up later on this month. So we'll see just how quick this comes together, and if indeed there's any kind of resolution before the November 2024 election. Who knows? But you've got this whole issue, I think, is going to be severely scrutinized. The Electoral College process, the process of getting electors, what is or is not considered political wrangling. because there is obviously political wrangling in this. It's a political process. So should we now have the ability to charge people for speech in political issues? Now, there are some things in the indictment of allegations that, the Trump group was trying to create fraudulent memos or, letters to officials that were full of knowingly false, again, there's that term, knowingly false claims of election fraud, immigrants voting, or, people who were dead were voting, or people who were underage were voting, all of these things. The indictment alleges, the Trump group knew were false, but still put it into official documents, trying to get states to object and get official actors to object and so on. So I think that the trial really is going to be a deep dive and a severe scrutinization of the Electoral College process, but it hopefully also elucidates everybody into the importance of having that check and balance in the electoral process. Bottom line, though, is Joe Biden's election was certified January 6, 2021. That's the bottom line. Nothing's going to change that. But will this whole process change whatever the outcome is in 2024? You've got allegations this is election interference going after Trump. You're going to have allegations that when the House Republicans and a lot of people predicting with all the evidence stacking up against the Bidens when it comes to pay for play, is the possible impeachment trajectory against Joe Biden. Is that going to be election interference? So great. Now we've got two things that each side can point to election interference for the 2024 election. Strap yourself in. It's going to be a